Hello to the first video of databases. We're going to go ahead and introduce the topic. Databases is another application that is bundled with Microsoft Office in regarding to this class. But before we discuss Access, I'd like to understand what is the word database. What is it really? If you notice, a database such as Microsoft Access, which is really the engine behind what we wanted to do, but Access is going to be like the software, like Excel or Word. It's not going to do too much for us unless we know how to communicate with it, our ideas. So it is a software that does specific things. Just like any other software that we have discussed, it has a main task behind it. The main task of using Microsoft Access is to organize the data. Also, we have the ability of entering the data easily by minimize the error that we create as a human, so we don't have really values that could go really out of range. For example, if I wanted to put somebody's height, I should limit the height to what is normal height for a human being. Query data, this is a very major part of every database, is the ability of asking questions with certain criteria. So also we need to remember that in many cases businesses cannot survive unless they can answer some of the question to how many items they have sold within a certain period of time, how many students got an A in certain classes, how many students did not succeed in that class. Those questions could be very important for us to make a decision to what we need to do for the next action. Report the result as an information, because again, information is really a data that has been processed in a meaningful way, and that's exactly the heart of a database, to create that end result, as we call it, information or report. We can ask questions such as what, who, when, and where if we do process the data accordingly. Again, all databases must be able to help us eventually solve problem quicker, make decision better, and take appropriate action based on what we really got to obtain from the database. So we're going to go ahead and continue with this in order to understand a few very important topics. So what does database represent in reality? In real life, we try to use the computer in general in order to emulate our reality. So a database represents a real life entity. That's kind of word we need to know what it stands for. Or in most cases, really a multiple entities. There is very rarely you find a database that concerned with one entity. Entity and entities and their relationship also that exist in this real world. What is an entity? An entity is anything we want to know more about. For example, if I wanted to describe something like a car. Car is an entity, so I have to come up with the list of the attributes, the property of the car, such as the color, such as the price of the car, the size of the engine. And if I have 20 cars or 30 cars in a parking lot, as a dealer for car dealers, then I have to organize all these cars. Each one of those is going to be represented by the same entity, which we call the car. But different cars have different values for their attributes. For example, the first car might be manufactured by Ford. The model could be a specific model. The size of the engine could be 6-cylinder, while the second car could be manufactured by Mercedes. It could be a certain class within the Mercedes as a model, and it could be also 4-cylinder. So those are kind of attributes based on the same entity. Of course, after we enter the data, we can organize, sort, again back to the query, or study our data in order to come up with a better understanding. For example, again, if I want to build a database for a list of my books, this is the example that we're going to follow through these videos. I would think about 3 different entities. These include the book itself, and the author of the book, and the publisher. I need to, from the beginning, if you want to, especially for those people who wants to continue to study databases in the future, is not to confuse or mix rather the different entities together. A lot of people, when they're trying to deal with books, they're trying to mention the name of the author of the book. No, leave the author later for later because we're going to link the book to the author later, because a book can be written by multiple authors, and an author can write multiple books. So when we think about entity from the very beginning of our study of our databases, it's going to save us a lot of headaches in the long run. And that's what we're going to even, as simple as it is now for us in this class, we're going to build the understanding that we need to focus on what is entity rather than trying to mix them. Because if we mix books and authors, where an author has multiple books and the books is written by multiple authors, we end up like a spreadsheet, and that is going to defeat the purpose of organizing a database. Again, let's explore, for example, only the first entity, because we cannot understand all the relationship that really at this stage that exists between book, author, and publisher. But we need to actually go ahead and focus on one of those entities, which is the book. So if the book is my first entity, and we need to understand now how to bring that ideas from a concept into a practical approach, so I could use Microsoft Access to really list the book that I want, or the list of the book that I wanted to maintain. We need to come up with the list of the attributes. I think attributes is another word for its characteristics, its feature. Property is another word, or as Access itself call it, field name, to know more about each book in my list. I usually take some time to think about what are the most important field names. For example, I don't really come up with endless numbers of fields names. I would like to know what are those ones that are going to help me to answer some of my question. For example, if I wanted to know about all the books that I have purchased and they have a price more than $50, then I must include the price as an attribute there. If I wanted to really know all the books that were published before a certain period of time, then I have to add the date of publication. Anyway, not to get lost through all these different ideas, I decided in those type of attributes. I wanted to have a book name for sure, and I'm going to limit the data type, of course, to text, and I'm going not to go more than 50 characters for that, because you will see when we apply this example, it's going to be a little bit more like 255 by default, meaning Access is going to give me 255 characters. I'm not going to use all of those, so I'm going to change it to 50. The book ISBN number also is going to have a unique approach to this value, because ISBN is international serial book numbers. This is a unique value. No two books could have it, just like your social security number. So we're going to look at this value as something like we refer to as a primary key or key field. And that's also, when we build the database, we're going to remind you one more time about how important it is for each of those entities that we're going to build using Access, going to have its own primary key. Of course, the date of publication, we have the data type as date or time. Price, of course, is going to be currency, and if the book is hardcover or not, we're going to say yes or no, because there is no other values. It's either hardcover or not. You're married or not. You're female. You're junior or not. You are any specific value that you're going to ask yes or no. Maybe junior is not a good example, because you could have really multiple values. So we could select junior, senior, and sophomore and freshman. Of course, subject, we have a preset values that I'm going to limit those to scientific, humanity, and social science. Of course, you could go a lot more than that, but in order to actually be able to use a text, but I'm going to use a pre-selected option, which we call it lookup wizard. So if you read your books, you'll be able to understand what we're talking about here. What do I need to know about my book as an entity? So these are the one that I wanted to know. Of course, you could go a lot more than that. If I wanted to see know the number of the pages, I could do that. If it's really maybe we could think about something, if it's electronic copy or not, if it's so we could go on and on. So the first thing that I would like to go ahead before I finish this video is to give you a distinction between three major terms that we're going to be using. When we talked about the title or the characteristics that we're going to describe each book, we have 6 of those. We have the book name, book ISBN. I think it's international. It's an international standard book number. The second is date of publication. The price is the 4th author, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th different attributes. So if I start entering the data for the first book, and this is the value is called Java programming here, and the ISBN numbers that I'm limiting that to 10. And as you notice, all of these going to be very unique values. No 2 of those going to have the same value. And the date of publication for the first one, then the price, yes. And of course, the subject here, I could choose among the 3 values: scientific, social science, and humanity. Look at the horizontal entry. If the horizontal entry is completed accordingly, we're going to call that record. But if I look at the vertical entry, for example, all the values under the book names, all of them are called field. So vertically it's called field, horizontally one individual row is called a record, and if I save everything in one files in my database, which is going to really be creating a table for me initially, then everything saved in the table is going to be a file. So field is the smallest because, as you notice, this is the vertical side of it. But if you look horizontally, which is multiple field combined together, and let me go ahead and say that very slowly, logically connected, a whole row in a file in a database, all these fields must be logically connected to each other in order to create a record. And the horizontal is called record, and everything together is saved as actually a file. So these 3 terms, field, records, and files also is going to be represented by a table, are very important for us to understand before we could actually move on to build our very first table in Microsoft Access. Until then, I'm going to wish you a good time. I hope you watch this a couple more times before you move on. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next video.